What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Taps game-by-game breakdown, ready for Week 4. We've changed it up a little bit this week. We've got our guy Brad here for our bets, picks, and props episodes, and we've also got our guy Hugh here for our DFS episodes. So thank you guys for joining us today. I appreciate it. You guys excited for this game-by-game breakdown?
I'm super pumped for this. I love fantasy. That's how I first got into all of this, and then I parlayed that over into the sports betting industry. So this is what got me started in the first place.
Yeah, there's a couple of pretty good games this week that I'm interested to talk about.
Yeah, Brad, do you really quick about the fantasy getting you into betting? I sometimes look at the lines or the props for the players, yards, and receiving stuff, and I'm like, oh, I know fantasy so well. 50 yards for this player, he's almost guaranteed it. It's lost me a good bit of money, but hey, we're looking to do better so far. Make sure you guys are liking, subscribing the video, or liking and hitting the bell for the videos, as well as subscribe to the channel. And if you're listening in on podcast, give us a rating and review. Let us know how you're feeling about us, and let us know what you think about Brad and Hugh in here and how much you guys enjoy seeing their beautiful faces on YouTube and hearing their beautiful voices on the podcast episodes. So let's jump into the first game. Oops, sorry, Brad.
Oh, no, we've got those dulcet tones since you were talking about these wonderful voices.
All right. Absolutely. It's going to be like an orchestra of just beauty. So let's get the first game going. We've got Washington and Atlanta. Obviously, I've got Taylor Heineke as my quarterback must start of the week. I'm picking on Atlanta all season long. I think he's going to be an absolute stud. Am I crazy?
I mean, I think Taylor Heineke can have a fine game, but I'm actually kind of going against the trend because the game started off, since it's in Atlanta, it started off with Atlanta favored by 1, and it's moved 2 full points in the other direction. Now Washington is a favorite. But I disagree with the market on this one. I actually think this is where Atlanta has their get-right game at home, and this is where they're going to turn it around. And I think that this is going to be kind of your last chance to kind of get buy-in low on some of those Falcons players. We can get to them in a second. But I think Heineke can have a fine game because, I mean, Atlanta hasn't had a defense in a decade. So
Absolutely.
I'm definitely not worried about their defense or their secondary whatsoever. So I think Heineke's a fine play this week.
Yeah, Atlanta defense is nothing. They've permitted an 8-0 TD to INT ratio, and they've allowed the 4th most rushing with about 104. So.
Okay, so letting up that much rushing yards. Sorry about that. Are you really looking to play Antonio Gibson this week?
I mean, at this point,
yeah, definitely.
I'm never taking Antonio Gibson out of my lineups unless he's not playing. Because Antonio Gibson, he's one of those players that, one, I do think he's going to start seeing more and more volume. And yes, we're all hoping and waiting for those dump offs to start, for him to start getting more involved in the passing game. J.D. Mckissick is that thorn in all of our sides there. But even after this last week, when you saw him take that 73-yard, little dump-off pass all the way to the house, it's just that type of explosive ability that he has. And against a Falcons, just atrocious defensive front, I think he's in for a great day.
I think Gibson has 20 touch plus upside. If we're talking, I really after what he did last week, I don't think Rivera can keep him going with Mckissick as such, as what we've seen previous weeks. Sorry, I just saw, I think the Jaguars just scored in the background there. No, McKissick has shown that he's going to stay effective on 3rd down. It's been that way forever, but I don't think he's going to really cut into it. But Gibson is, I think, primed for a particular breakout, I would say, in this game. I think that fantasy managers should be, he's an obvious auto start this week for me.
Okay, absolutely. Now, let's talk about really quickly just the Atlanta running back room. We've seen Cordell Patterson be the most valuable player that you can start at the running back position in fantasy from the Falcons. Mike Davis has kind of had a little bit of success, hasn't really shown out too much, but if anything's more hurt you at this point. Which running back are you starting, if any?
I mean, at this point, I don't think we can do anything but start Cordero Patterson. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous how effective he's been out of nowhere. And I mean, I don't think any of us saw this coming or predicted this, but I mean, Cordero Patterson has outscored every other Falcons fantasy player, period, except for maybe the kicker. But I mean, he's even outscored Matt Ryan. He's outscored Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, these names that we love and that we're so excited for with this season. And it's Cordero Patterson that's the one that's having a game. So for me, I'm just staying away from Mike Davis until something shifts or until something changes. But I honestly don't see things shifting or changing in his favor. I think Cordero Patterson is just offering up a little bit too much of that dual position ability and that upside, and kind of a tweener, as some people like to refer to him. He's in between a running back and a wide receiver. He's not all the way in on either one of those spots, and I think it's, for fantasy wise, I think it's working out for him.
I think if you're looking, I think you're going to get a fine play out of Davis. You're limited by his ceiling for what you're going to get with Cordero because of what Cordero offers you. He's lining up and playing, and he is getting passes and targets and stuff. And so I think if you're looking for a ceiling, you're looking for Cordero. And I think he's if you're looking for that ceiling play, it's Cordero over Davis for me.
Okay. Me personally, I'm sitting there. I'm only putting either of these guys in at a flex position at most. And I'm more likely to put Patterson in there. I think he's got more opportunity because he's got that option as a receiver role and that running back role. But let's go over to the receivers there. Obviously, Calvin Ridley and Terry McLaurin, you're starting this week regardless. They're pretty much must starts at this point. Are there any of the Falcons receivers you guys are interested this week outside of Calvin Ridley?
I just am not seeing enough volume since Arthur Smith is coming as the head coach for me to want to get involved with any other wide receiver. I mean, when we're looking at the pass catchers in Atlanta, really the only thing that we're seeing is the targets are going to Ridley, even though he has only put up one top 24 week throughout the first 3 weeks. In week 2, it's just not connecting right now with him and Ryan. But the offense itself is just struggling altogether. And I think that this could be the week at home against the Washington football team. Sorry, that's a throwback there. I don't think I'll ever quite get used to that until they give me an actual, team name to say. But I just don't see. Yes, they have some great pieces up front. Chase Young is a monster. We know that. But I don't think that defense is quite what it was built out to be last year. They didn't really play a lot of strong quarterbacks throughout the year. And then when they came against granted, they ended up being the Super Bowl champs, but a great offense, they gave up over 500 yards in the playoffs last year. And they haven't exactly been stifling so far this year. So I'm not really necessarily concerned about their defense. And so I think that this is our chance to see maybe Ridley have a breakout game.
Okay.
I'm liking that. I just think, you've got 17 targets on the year for Pitts and 16 on the year for Patterson. So, you're Ridley is doubling them pretty much. Pretty much doubling them with 30. 29. But I don't know. It just, I think Matt Ryan learning a new offense again for another year is really taking a toll on him, and I think that's why this offense isn't clicking. So, you have to, like you said, you have to trot out Ridley for what the upside brings. I think at this point, I'm going to throw Kyle Pitts in there as as he's the number 2. I think that's just a dart throw at this point. And, you're going to get everything between the 20s, and you might get 70 yards out of him for 4 catches. So, 70 yards is probably a lot, but on his upside. But, Patterson probably offers some upside, but everybody else I'm staying away from.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And then obviously Washington's best fantasy option at this point, De'Ami Brown, that dart throw, and we've got Adam Humphries. Any of them interesting to you guys?
No, I'm really just staying away from the rest of the wide receivers outside of Terry McLaurin until Curtis Samuel comes back off of the IR. Until he does, I just don't really have any interest in the rest of the pass catchers there.
Only one I can say is just Logan Thomas. That's probably about it.
Right. And there, I was going to follow up. Tight ends out of this group, we've got Pitts and Thomas. Obviously, I think Pitts is still a must-start tight end. I think both of you have talked about how you think it's possible for the breakout game this week, and he gets the targets. I mean, he's, as you were just saying, tied for targets with Cordell Patterson. Just hasn't really been having any big games or touchdowns so far. You guys starting both tight ends, and absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, in the tight end landscape, we're really just shooting for a touchdown at this point if we're not looking at one of the top end elites, one of those top 4 or 5. So, I mean, Logan Thomas and Kyle Pitts have as much opportunity for those touchdowns as anybody, and Kyle Pitts is getting those targets. So we're still going to start him, but it's just waiting for one of those times when he really lights up.
Okay. Let's jump over to Houston and Buffalo. I'm personally excited for this game because I've been a low-key Houston fan for some reason I haven't been able to explain yet this season. But, hey, if they end up beating Buffalo, it makes me feel better about liking them randomly and then being a Dolphins fan, so it adds up really well. Josh Allen's last week, we finally saw him be the Josh Allen we've been hyped him up to be. Put up 4 touchdowns last week. Do we see that again against Houston, or do we see what more like Miami where they just let the rushing game do the work because this could just be an easy stomp?
I mean, as much as they like to maybe think about the rushing game, the Bills run through the air. They just are throwing the ball so much. Josh Allen just getting that volume, and he finally lit it up last week. It was like everything connected and clicked together with him and Manny Sanders connected. And then, I mean, him and Diggs still haven't quite hit that connection this year the way they were last year. If that hits as well, then it's just a dangerous combination. And it's not like Houston has anybody in the secondary that's worth anything. So the defense is just shot. So I expect Josh Allen and the rest of the Buffalo Bills offense to just light it up.
Yeah, I'm just click. If you see a Bill, click play. Like Diggs, Beasley, Sanders. I'm even going in on Knox too.
Okay, yeah, I actually like Dawson Knox this week just because of the easy matchup and his availability if you're deciding to stream tight ends this week. So obviously you're saying Josh Allen, all the receivers were starting at least in a flex play. Really quickly, just want to go over the running backs really quick. Between Devin Singletary and Zach Moss has been lighting it up the past 2 weeks. Do we expect him to find the end zone again this week? He does seem to be having the bulk of not only the red zone carries, but the carries in general. I have him on a couple of my rosters, so help me out, guys.
I just can't really get behind the Buffalo rushing attack. I know this is something I've been dealing with since last year, and I just don't necessarily trust either side of this because they kind of go back and forth between the two backs. So honestly, for me, I'm still, until something really settles and shakes out in Buffalo, I'm just not touching the running backs there unless I'm absolutely desperate.
Yeah, so if I told you player A has out-touched player B 45 to 33 times and is out-gaining him 91 to 26 and a score, you'd take player A. But then when I say player A and player B play on the same team and they're the Bills and they don't have a run game, it's like at that point I'm playing either of those in a flex position if I need to.
Okay, yeah, I'm sitting there with you. So don't take Zach Moss out of a taxi spot. Leave him there for some reason because maybe he'll do something. All right, over on the Houston Texans, this is probably going to be a quick one just because of how this team's been shaped up to be. Davis Mills, are we playing him?
No chance. There's no way I'm playing against the Buffalo Bills secondary. They have a great secondary. I don't trust him to even have enough passing volume for it to matter. Maybe he gets some stuff going in garbage time, but no. Davis Mills is a clear bench.
I was thinking 2 QB, I'd play Mills just for garbage time because of the connection he has with Cooks.
I was going to say we got to keep Brandon Cooks fed. I've been hyping him up so far this season, and I'm loving it. going so far. So the running back room, I'm staying completely away from. Mark Ingram, David Johnson, Phillip Lindsay, even Rex Burkhead. None of them should be seeing anyone starting lineup this week, any week, or any time unless 3 out of the 4 of them go down.
Yeah, so
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. And obviously outside of Brandon Cooks, which I personally think Brandon Cooks is a must start every week right now. He's a top 5 in receiving yards. He's found the end zone in, I want to say, every game. I'm sorry, he's only found the end zone once so far, which means with the amount of targets that he gets, we should see some more touchdowns coming. Anthony Miller, though, kind of a sneaky grab possibly. I know some people are already throwing him in at a flex position, expecting him to take over some kind of secondary role to Cooks. Do you guys see anything in that?
So with Miller, I don't have necessarily a problem with him. Cooks, I agree with you, is a must start at this point. He's getting the volume, and he's proving once again what he does every single year of his career. He's a 1,000-yard receiver. He's great. He's been great his entire career. I don't know why we continually doubt him. I doubted him again this year. It was my mistake. He's great. But Anthony Miller, it just goes back to how bad I think that the Houston Texans are overall. Yes, you can have one great option, but I don't think you're going to have any secondary or tertiary options. Anthony Miller might be a sneaky like DFS play for like a tourney, but I don't see him like you putting him in your actual lineups.
Okay. So, are you? Just a quick question: are you concerned at all with Tre'Davious White shadow coverage on Cooks?
I'm not just because of – see, I'm not concerned about that just because of the fact that Cooks has been doing this so long and he's getting the volume. And you know what? Tre'Davious White is going to shadow him and cover him. But once the Bills are up, 20 points or they're up 15 points, I mean, they're a 17-point favorite in the game. So there's no reason to doubt that they could easily be ahead by 3 scores. And once that happens – they're going to play prevent. And so that's when you're going to see a lot of the volume go to Cooks, and then that's when I think he'll be fine.
So I think as a number 2, okay, so to follow up for your number 2 there, John, I think the number 2 for the Texans is one of their tight ends, and I think it's Jordan Akins. I think you could take a shot on Miller, but I think that Akins is the number 2 in that passing offense.
I mean, he showed it last week once Mill got his start. So are we starting Miller at all? Should anyone be starting him in a dynasty or a redraft league if you have, let's say, Darnell Mooney or Anthony Miller this week?
I'd still take Mooney.
I'll still take Mooney. I think the talent's better.
Okay.
And he's going to have more volume.
All right. And then, like you said, tight ends, obviously – Dawson Knox, I think, is a nice, sneaky little tight end play that can get you by this week with some touchdown upside, especially going against Houston. Jordan Akins, you just mentioned you think that he's the number 2 option there. I think with Davis Mills there, you saw it last week. Those 5 targets came at pretty important times. They weren't just straight garbage time. They were, we're trying to win this game. We're trying to come back, man, get down the field. So I really like that take, and it's also not something that I've thought of, like, really put to my brain yet. So do you play him at all? Is you that confident in him or no? Because now you've got me curious.
I mean, if I have him, yeah, I might play him. I mean,
you can have him in your league. He's on the waiver wire. You can have him if you want him.
12-man league, is he streamable or no?
I guess it would have to depend on your situation and who you're playing, but I think he's a consideration for streaming this week.
Okay. Interesting. I like it. I don't hate it. Okay, how about this? Dawson Knox or Akins?
Knox.
Both of them are on the waiver wire for you.
I'm going to lean Knox just because of the potential for red zone targets that he gets.
They're going to be in a lot more scoring positions than Houston is going to get into scoring positions. So that's the only reason I'm going to take Knox. Either one is a shot in the dark at trying to get a touchdown, really. But like you said, I mean, Akins has that. He caught a couple more, and for a bad or rookie or young quarterback, the tight end is often an outlet that they use, especially to try and move those chains. So in a PPR, he's streamable, but it's just like don't be surprised if you get goosed either.
Low risk, high reward. Like it. Let's go over to Detroit and the Bears. Currently, their over-unders 42. We're looking at two offenses that seem to have a really hard time getting a start outside of their running game. Are we playing either Jared Goff or Justin Fields comfortably this week?
I think you can play Justin Fields because after 1 week of seeing how atrocious last week went, I think even Matt Nagy isn't stupid enough to not utilize Justin Fields' ability to run the ball. And so I think we're going to see more running this week from him. And I think that's going to give him at least a decent floor. And it's not like Detroit has a world beater of a defense. So I don't hate it, but I think you can just find better streaming options out there than either of them, to be honest, until something else clicks.
Okay.
I think I would play. I don't know. This is an AFC North divisional matchup, and division games, as we saw last week with Pittsburgh and Cincinnati, throw out. You can throw everything out the window at that, and this is two new quarterbacks. Last year it was two different quarterbacks for each team, so I'm not really sure. But I think if I was stuck in a vacuum, I think I'd like Goff.
All right. Fair enough. Now, over in the running backs, Deandre Swift I believe he's running back 4 on the year right now. I'm running back 3 in PPR, running back 7 in standard. David Montgomery has had a little bit of success early on, but hasn't really had much since. And then obviously Jamal Williams is another player that people need to be paying some attention to. Are we comfortable playing all three of these guys? Anyone staying away from anyone this week because of the matchups?
I'll stay away from Jamal Williams.
See, I feel the exact opposite. So for me, because I think that there's a chance that if the Bears offense can't get going, Detroit has shown that they can at least put up some points. And DeAndre Swift is locked and loaded. He's in your lineup. You're not moving that. He's guaranteed in there. Looking at Montgomery and Jamal Williams, I think they're flex plays. Montgomery's, to me, he's a flex borderline RB2 play. And Jamal Williams, he has the upside of if Detroit gets a big lead because of, rookie quarterback play on the other side, turning the ball over, that can lead to some quick scores. If they're in, getting a lot of those inside the 10 or inside the 5, he could just, fall into the end zone. Or if they pick up enough of a lead, then they're going to be running we already know that Detroit wants to be tough. They want to bite them kneecaps. So they're going to keep running the ball. And so if they get a lead, they're going to run it into the ground. So I think that you could see enough volume for Jamal Williams that's why I think that he could be a fine play for a flex. But just, you're tempering your expectations. You're trying to shoot for like maybe 10 points or something like that from him.
I'm just going off of what we saw last week, and the Browns just ran all over him. It wasn't, Chubb got, 8 points in fantasy because Kareem Hunt did most of the work, but still the Bears just bled points to the running backs. And when we saw Detroit play Baltimore, it just Swift saw everything. It was a close game. It was a slog matchup. And with that slog matchup, I think that's going to reproduce itself in this game with, the NFC North. And I think Swift is just going to see all of it.
All right. Let's jump into the receivers. I'm actually completely fading all the receivers from this game. I'm not playing Allen Robinson this week. I'm not touching any of the Lions receivers, and I'm actually not comfortable playing Darnell Mooney this week. And I'm someone that's been a huge Darnell Mooney fan since last year. Am I crazy? Is there anyone that you guys are very comfortable playing?
You're not crazy. I don't think I'm going to play any of the receivers except for Allen Robinson. For me, Allen Robinson is one of those guys. He's going to be in your lineup. He's still getting targets. Yes, there's been a lot of issues in Chicago, but when has Allen Robinson ever played with a good quarterback? The last time he played with a decent quarterback was when he was in middle school, okay? The guy doesn't play hasn't had a good quarterback. I mean, the guy gets Blake Bortles, Nick Foles, and Mitch Trubisky. And I mean, good Lord, he gets no one to throw him the ball. So
All those guys
those
guys were throwing more than 20 passes a game, though.
Yes, and I understand that, but I just don't see how Allen Robinson is going to be suppressed for too terribly long. So, I mean, like I said earlier, Detroit doesn't have a good defense. So maybe this is the game that Allen Robinson pops back in. But for me, I'm just not ready to take him out of my lineup yet.
Okay.
I don't know. I just keep seeing that GIF from Arrested Development with the magic hands, the sort of thing with Matt Nagy. Like, I don't know what to expect from that guy. He says something and does another thing. He's earlier this week said Nick Foles and Andy Dalton and Justin Fields are all viable this weekend. It's like, this dude, I don't think knows how to really run his team. I'm not going to get into it, but temper your expectations for your Bears wide receivers. That's all I'm saying this week. I don't think Allen Robinson's going to, he may get there on PPR volume, but man, that offensive line sucks for Chicago, and I think that's what's hampering them the most.
It's definitely not helpful. The PPR in PPR, I'll stand behind the Allen Robinson pick, but if you're not playing in any type of PPR, then I wouldn't play a single wide receiver from this league. I'll even say that from this game.
All right. Outside of TJ Hawkinson, because he's a must-start tight end every week right now, Cole Kmet, are we playing Cole Kmet, Darren Fells, Jimmy Graham, or are we just staying away from Chicago's tight ends?
Fade them all. Don't touch them. Leave them on the waiver wire. Let somebody else deal with that crap.
I'll play Kmet. I'll always be a proponent to playing the tight end for a rookie quarterback. Because if the offensive coordinator has any shred of decency, they just, easy targets to the tight end 10 yards down, 5-10 yards down the field over the middle, gets him some nice receptions to pretty much, help himself out. So, I mean, yeah, I'll play Kmet.
Okay.
I like what you just said there, though. If the offensive coordinator has any brains whatsoever, then he's going to use the tight end as an outlet. But too bad Matt Nagy took over play calling again, and we've clearly already established the man's insane and has no idea what he's doing. Vegas is odds-on favorite to be the first head coach fired. So I just have no faith in the team overall in general.
Right. I mean, I can't blame you too much. Honestly, they looked absolutely terrible last week. Made a big play to even grab Justin Fields. So hopefully they can fix that offensive line like you're saying, Hugh. Let's go on over to our next game. We've got the Carolina Panthers and the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, I personally think we've got Dak Prescott as a top 5, top 8 quarterback again this week. I think Carolina's Sam Darnold is an incredibly great play, being like the Cowboys just turn every game into a shootout. And Carolina's been doing a great job of keeping up with people so far this week. So I think both of them, if you've got them. But if you've got both because you pick Sam Darnold up off the waivers, I'm still taking Prescott. I think that Darnold's more likely to bust. There we go. That's English. More likely to bust than Dak Prescott is going to be going into this week. What's your guys' stances on each of them this week?
I'm a huge Dak Prescott fan. I love Dak, even though his name is Dakota, and that's something that's a sticking point for me. I can't get past it. But his talent is undeniable on the field, and he's surrounded by awesome weapons. I mean, CD and Amari, and now the tight ends are all coming on. You got Zeke and Pollard out of the backfield. I mean, he's just got so many weapons, and he's got the talent to use them. I think he's looking awesome. And the great thing about him being awesome is Dallas has no defense. So put up the points and then watch your defense give up points, and you have to keep going. So, yeah, I love Prescott. I think there's probably, 3 or 4 quarterbacks in the NFL that you're starting over him in fantasy. So I agree with you. To me, he's locked and loaded, top 5, top 6 quarterback for me.
Okay. I think both of these quarterbacks are very viable this week. Both probably going to hit top 12. So QB1s on the week. And stay tuned for our show later, John, when we go into DFS, and we'll be talking about Sam Darnold there.
Okay. Stay tuned for that for sure. I'm going to have to start looking at my lineup soon. I haven't even looked, I'll be honest. So let's go over to the running backs. We've got Ezekiel Elliott, who finally saw a great fantasy day, 95 yards and 2 touchdowns. Great way to start. Tony Pollard even had himself 60 yards and 11 carries. So still got some work, but Zeke having the bigger share and getting those red zone carries. Are we getting more of a comfortable feeling with Ezekiel Elliott?
I mean, for me, Zeke is the guy, and you just have to look at it at this point. It doesn't really matter how good Tony Pollard can look. He can look amazing, and he has looked amazing. He's really efficient with his touches, and he's looked great. But Zeke is owed so much money, and they can't get away from that. They're stuck with him, so they're going to use him, and they're going to give him the lion's share of the volume. And I think in a game like this where, I'm not scared of Carolina's defensive line. They've picked up some pieces to try and shore it up, in the draft this last couple of years. But I'm still not overly impressed with their D-line. So, I mean, Zeke is an auto play for me. And Tony Pollard, to me, I don't think he's quite to the level of like Jamal Williams, to where he's getting enough volume to where he's really a flexible, worthy play. Because while he did get 11 carries and hit 60 yards out of it, he could just as easily get, 5 carries next week and not really get it too terribly much. So staying away from Pollard, but big fan of Zeke, obviously.
Nice. Let's talk about Chubb really, really quickly. I'm looking down when I was running back 2 this week, and I'm comfortable playing him there. I agree, disagree?
Yeah, I don't think you need to say anything more than that. I mean, it's not like it's 90% CMC, but like you're getting probably 70 to 80% with that. I mean, he still saw targets in the past game when CMC went out. Still saw pretty much all the carries at that point. So if you've got him, I definitely feel confident in playing him this week as my RB2.
I mean, name of the running back game is volume, and Chuba's going to get it without CMC there. So I feel confident with having him as a middling RB2.
Okay. And the receivers, we've got – let's just talk about the top guys. I'm going to bring up 5. DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson, Terrace Marshall, CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper. I'm loving DJ Moore. I'm loving CeeDee Lamb. I'm loving Amari Cooper in this shootout. I think DJ Moore is going to be a beast. I have been very negative on Robbie Anderson this year, and I'm scared because I think he's going to have a great game. And then Terrace Marshall, if Anderson's shut down, I think Terrace is someone that's going to see a lot of more volume than we're used to, and him taking a big step forward this week and might even be a breakout week. So I'm actually flexing in Terrace Marshall, and even though I'm not big on Anderson, if I've got him in some league randomly, he's probably in my flex position. I think it's going to be a great game.
I think Robbie's going to have a good game this week. You saw an uptick in targets to Robbie when CMC went out, and I think if they're going to go into this week with a better game plan than on the fly with CMC going down, I think they're going to have to incorporate Robbie a little bit more. So I would see a little bit more targets, maybe not catches, but I'll see some more targets thrown his way this week. And what they're going to do, you're going to have to keep up with Dallas if you want to play with them. So maybe you'll see some more, and that'll lead to eventual receptions. So,
yeah, I mean, going across the wide receivers, obviously the big 3 in this game, Amari, CD, and DJ Moore, all awesome, all having great years. DJ Moore with the breakout this year, looking amazing. They're in your lineups. We don't really need to talk about them. Terrace Marshall, I think, is really showing a lot for a rookie early on, especially a rookie coming into a wide receiver room that was already pretty much, settled from the 1-2 spot with, DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson there. But he has quite surprised me with how he's stepped up. And I've also been quite surprised with the way they've used Robbie Anderson. To be honest, I'm truthfully really disappointed. I was a big Robbie Anderson fan, big Robbie Anderson truther all offseason, and I have to eat my hat on this one because it has just been dead wrong. And so for me, even though this game is one of the, I think it's the third highest over under for the week at 51.5. I can't play Robbie Anderson. He's hurt me. He's done me wrong. I can't do it.
I think this might change your opinion of Robbie. Dan Arnold has had 11 targets, and they just traded him this year. So with 11 targets already, like he's no longer a factor. So he's vacated.
Yes.
Do you buy that now that Arnold is gone, Robbie needs to step up?
I actually Arnold is because of Trimble, the other tight end, and I think that he's going to see more of those targets, and he's been seeing more. He's been getting a higher snap percentage, so I think that's kind of why they felt comfortable moving Arnold, because they feel Trimble is ready to take over that spot. But that's just my take. So I'm just, like I said, I'm out on Robbie until. And I'm willing to miss that blow up where he takes one to the house and he goes 2 for 75 and a touchdown. And I'm willing to miss out on that just to also not worry about getting goosed again.
I mean, Matt Rule did say we've got to get Robbie going this week.
I don't trust any of those coaches anymore. They're all a bunch of liars.
Let's move on to the Colts-Miami game where we've got Carson Wentz, Jacoby Brissett as the two quarterbacks there. Personally, I'm looking at two low-end quarterback twos, only playing them in desperate two-quarterback league or superflex situations. Even in superflex, you're probably playing another stud off your roster over them. Anyone interested in Carson Wentz this week? I know some people were really big on his blow-up this offseason.
No, I think the Colts are just hurt, just in general. Everything is just, they are. I think they are the worst team this year in the NFL, in my opinion, just due to the amount of injuries that I have. Quentin Nelson's out. I mean, you have half a foot Wentz, and I'm just not touching anything. You know, there's probably one player that I'd play out of this, and that's about it.
Yeah, I can't stomach starting either of those quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett has shown me nothing to think that anything has really changed as to where he was previously in his career. And Carson Wentz, to me, ever since his MVP season where he was lighting the world on fire and then, blew out his knee, he's just never been the same since then. And he's just, to me, he looks worse and worse. I wouldn't be surprised if he's relegated to a backup in a year or two, to be honest. I'm out on Wentz and I'm out on Jacoby.
Okay. Out of the running backs, I think the only super viable ones this week, we've got Jonathan Taylor, Myles Gaskin, possibly Nyheim Hines. I know Mike really likes throwing Nyheim Hines in there when he's a viable option. And I think he was saying he's a waiver option in some leagues. So Jonathan Taylor had a bum week. Myles Gaskin was a touchdown short of it being a great week. Did put up 65 yards on his 13 carries. So are we looking at any of these guys excited to throw him on a roster? Are we only playing Jonathan Taylor because he's the must-start number one back in Indianapolis?
I think Nyheim Hines is a flex play this week. Definitely consideration, considering the Dolphins, I believe they're favored, if I'm not mistaken, right?
2-point favorites.
Yeah, so with that's going to be said, playing from behind, Hines is definitely in play for me as a flex consideration. He outsnapped Taylor, 34-29, and ran 9 more pass routes than Taylor did. So he's getting more of the work.
Yeah, I'm not benching Taylor, but I'm definitely tempering my expectations. I'm until something changes, especially with how beat up that offensive line is and how bad Wentz has looked. You can't have a good running game with no fear of a passing attack. And so I'm just tempering my expectations for Taylor, and I'm looking at him as kind of like a low end RB2 to be honest at this point. Very disappointing from where we thought he would be before the season, but you got to kind of let go of that draft cost and evaluate what's actually happening in season. And right now, Taylor to me is more of a low end RB2 option at this point.
Fair enough. Over on the receivers, let's just go through. I think the only real ones I'm interested in this week, if anything, is going to be Jalen Waddle, and maybe Michael Pittman is a mid-range flex option. I think Jalen Waddle's a wide receiver 3 flex if you don't have a wide receiver there. Not interested in Zac Pascal, even though last week we did still see him get targets in the red zone. I think he was overthrown on a pass that was like 35 yards in the red zone, which would have been another week we saw him get in the end zone. I'm still not playing him though, even against Miami. I think we're going to see their defense have a real good day. Are you guys liking any of these receivers with these bum quarterbacks?
So that's the problem for me, is that it's the bum quarterbacks. And Miami, if they have one really good thing going for them, it's their secondary. So, I mean, Pittman to me is still a flex-worthy play because he's getting enough volume. But I'm not touching any other pass catchers on the Indy side of the ball. And then on the Miami side of the ball, I mean, Waddle, if you're a low-end wide receiver 3, or if you're in a multi-flex league where you're playing like 2 flexes along with 2 wide receivers, something along those lines, I think he has the potential, because he just has that speed and that ability to hit those crossers across the middle of the field and just take one to the house. So he's always got that potential for a big blow-up play. But I have so little confidence in the quarterbacks that I'm kind of staying away from the wide receivers if I can.
I think Pittman is definitely I think he's probably going to be a low-end wide receiver 2, high 3 for me this week. I like Pittman in this matchup.
Okay. Tight ends really fast. Mckissick, I think, is the only one viable. Or just real quick, start or sit?
Start.
Mckissick. Start. Okay.
Start Mckissick. I think I think just what we've seen with his name, Brissett. Sorry, I think Brissett will just he'll hyper target Gesicki, because he did that when he was in Indianapolis. He did it to the tight ends there.
Yep, very fair. New York Giants, New Orleans Saints. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. Cleveland Browns, Minnesota Vikings. Lizzo's old man. I don't think she's still with them, but used to be a new man on the Minnesota Vikings. Baker Mayfield, Kirk Cousins, absolute baller this year so far. One of the most valuable waiver quarterbacks you could find on the right. On the waivers so far. It's getting late. And then Baker Mayfield hasn't really been putting up a lot of stats, but has been winning some games here and there. Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt's been balling. Nick Chubb did not have the best week last week, kind of stifled in the run game. Are we super excited for this game, or the quarterbacks, or any of the running backs, especially if Dalvin Cook does for some reason make it onto the field on Sunday?
I mean, I'm super excited for the game overall, because these two teams have looked at least the Vikings offensively have looked great. And the Browns, as much as I hate them, I mean, you guys see the Steelers stuff behind me, hate the Browns, but the team itself has looked good. I think you can fully expect, Baker's not throwing up world beater numbers, but I think he's a safe bet for, 2 to 250 yards and, 2 touchdowns. I don't think that that's a big stretch of the imagination. And with Dalvin hobbled and them finding an actual viable third wide receiver in KJ Osborne, blanked for a second, over there in Minnesota, I think that's just making that passing attack even more virile with Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. So I think that all around, I really like both quarterbacks. I think, Kirk Cousins is on fire. And Baker is he's going to be a high-end, QB too. So he's definitely in play in super flex leagues.
Fair enough. Hugh, quarterbacks, you liking them?
Auto start Kirk Cousins here.
Okay.
And then I think you can start Baker if you're in a 2-quarterback league. And I think if you need to and have a bad matchup, I think you can pick Baker up off the waiver wire if he's there. The Vikings cannot stop anybody on defense. Their defense is almost as poor as it was last year. So we are seeing high-scoring games from them. and I think it's just going to continue.
All right. And then the running backs, Chubb and Hunt, I think you need to have, if you've got them on your teams, they need to find their way into your lineup. Nick Chubb in the running back spot, Kareem Hunt at the running back 2 or waiver spot. If Dalvin Cook for some reason plays this week, do you play him? Right
I don't
now,
think you
he's
can
limited
bench
at
him.
practice.
I just don't think you can bench him because if he's there, if he's on the field, he gets the volume, he gets the targets. He's just too good and too valuable for you to bench him.
Okay.
And so I don't think that there's any way to do that.
All right.
Yeah, I think after him coming in at a limited capacity on Thursday, I think that's a good thing. That he's not, he's not out. He's not anything. Like he practiced today, so I think that gives me hope for him this weekend. Now maybe you limit what the expectations are for him, but I still like him in this matchup. So I if he's playing, I'm playing him.
All right. In the receivers, I think if you've got Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen, they're obviously going to be in your lineups at this point, even in this matchup. Now, on Cleveland, the only guy I'm really looking at and I'm kind of interested in, OBJ. It's his return game. Are we playing him? Do we like him? Are we excited for OBJ? Wide receiver 2, 3?
I think he's a wide receiver 2. Almost. I think he could be a one, almost a 1 this week. I mean, he's someone I'm looking at in DFS. He's somebody I'm looking at to get. I'm actually looking to maybe acquire him in some leagues that I don't have him in. So I think he's on the up with Landry being out for the foreseeable future. And I think what we saw with the connection between him and Baker it's there already. Like you see it with the connection. And after the game, Odell said he didn't feel in game shape. So I think he's only going to get better from there. And like I said, with the Vikings' poor defense, I think this could be a breakout game for Odell.
All right. Anyone that you like in this one?
I mean, I like the wide receivers on obviously on the Minnesota side. I don't really. I agree with a lot of the points that Hugh's making, but for me, I'm still trying to just kind of avoid playing Odell for right now. I want to see another week go by, see that connection with Baker grow because it's just not been there in the past. And that's been my big struggle, that they've just always seemed on a different page. On those option routes where you see Odell run a little 10-yard fly and they cut inside and Baker throws it the outside, just thinking they were on the same page, and clearly they're not. There's that disconnect. And so I think I just want to wait for another week. I agree with the points that Hugh made, and I think that Odell's he's on the upswing, but I just want to see it before I play him, if I can avoid it.
All righty. In the tight ends, we've got Njoku, we've got Hooper, we've got Conklin. I think the only guy you can do it best, and that's a deep, deep stream. I think you're playing Tyler Conklin that way. He's a very viable guy. Last week he got in the end zone, and he's been getting a little bit of targets here and there. And I do think that he could be have some touchdown upside, being that Justin Jefferson's been seen to get covered pretty well. Adam Thielen's got the touch, the big body, but it's a shot in the dark tight end. You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I think Conklin's got the touchdown upside, and he's a viable player. I think he's actually more talented than I realized as I've been watching him recently.
Very athletic.
He's very athletic, and so I think that big bodied in the red zone. I think that he's definitely in play. I'm not touching any Cleveland tight end. Leave me out of that mess.
Mm-hmm.
Let's jump over to the Giants and the Saints. We've got Daniel Jones, Jameis Winston. Again, I'm not excited to play either of these guys, and I don't think I'm going to be putting either of them in a lineup. I think New Orleans' defense is so all over the place, whether or not they're going to stop the quarterback or let them go up, just destroy them, that Daniel Jones isn't consistent enough for me to trust. And then Jameis Winston's kind of been doing the same thing, where it's not so much the defense he's playing against, just kind of his own performance and how the game's going and whether or not he even gets the opportunity to have those attempts and do his job. So realistically, I'm staying away.
Yeah, I mean, I'll summarize my analysis of this game real quick. I'm not interested in playing either QB because Jameis is who knows right now. And then Daniel Jones is still our favorite, turnover machine. The guy doesn't know what the word ball security means. And so, and New Orleans defense is really, really good looking to me. So I'm just staying away from both quarterbacks if I can. And even if I can't, I will find somebody off waivers before I'm going to touch Jameis Winston. Just not doing it.
I think Jameis is a streaming option this week just because of how poor the Giants' defense is. True, I agree. He is a turnover machine. That's what you get with Jameis. You get your 50 touchdowns, but you get your 50 interceptions as well. He's a streaming option. If need be, probably would find somebody else. But if you need to, I'd use him in a pinch. Daniel Jones, the guy offers a low or a higher floor than most just due to his rushing. But I have to agree with Brad there that the Saints defense has looked on par so far this season.
Alrighty then.
Also, if you look at the overall score of the game, the over-under is 41.5 for Vegas. So that's the lowest one of the week. I just don't see enough points being put up for them to really be viable starts.
All right. Obviously, I think you're starting both running backs in this situation. I don't think there's going to be much of a question there. As far as the receivers, Giants receivers, I was kind of getting hot on Sterling Shepard, but with what happened last week, I believe he got injured like the second quarter. Just got a little banged up. Galladay seemed to take over a little bit of that role. Might be someone I'm looking at as a flex option this week, possibly. But other than that, I'm not touching any of the Saints receivers. I think it's anybody's week on that team. And I'm not going to take a shot on any of them.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a shot in the dark and just no thanks. So I mean, on the Saints side. Now for me on the Giants side, I think that Kenny G is a fine flex play this week with Sterling Shepard gone. And I think the only two real targets that we're going to see is going to, Kenny G, and then you're going to see some going to Evan Ingram.
Yeah, I think with Evan Ingram's return, you'll see a little bit swing his way. I think Kenny Galladay will get most of the targets this week with a little bit of Saquon sprinkled in there. Maybe a little bit of Kyle Rudolph, who knows. But I think I'd feel confident in playing Kenny G if I had him. And I'd play Evan Ingram if I need to spot start a tight end. And then as far as what Brad said with the wide receivers on New Orleans, I mean, blindfold yourself, pick one. Hopefully his name's Kamara because he's leading the team with 14 targets.
All right. Let's jump over to Tennessee and New Jersey, and I'm just going to make this one extremely quick. I'm not touching any Jets. I'm not putting any of them on my flex. And even Tennessee, I'm playing Derrick Henry, and that's pretty much it. I don't trust Ryan Tannehill this week. The Jets have just not required teams to throw the ball against them. They've been allowing a lot of rushing yards and just letting teams get up early and stay up on them. And so I'm not comfortable playing Ryan Tannehill, especially if Julio and A.J. Brown continue to seem like they're banged up. If you need to take a shot on a receiver, I'm not really comfortable taking my streaming options to Tennessee. So it's Derrick or no one.
I don't blame you on that. Real quick for me, the Jets, just if they're on your roster, you might as well just throw them in the trash. Like I don't even know what they're doing on rosters at this point. Like the Jets just really don't have a lot going on here in the world. Tennessee, yes, Derrick Henry, he's a monster of a human. You're going to play Derrick Henry. You're never not playing Derrick Henry. A.J. Brown's out, and while Julio is banged up, Julio's been banged up for the last 4 years, and he still is awesome from time to time. He was awesome, every year until this year. So I'm going to stick with and he's had some, he's looked all right this year, especially when A.J. Brown went out. So I'm fine with playing Julio and Derrick Henry. Other than that, count me out.
I'd be interested in Ferkser. And then the only person I'm ever just going to touch or look at in the Jets, I'll look at Corey Davis. I mean, the Titans are still a football team, but God, they've let so much go through. And if there's any hope for Zach Wilson, it's here. I mean, he's going to turn the ball over, so you're streaming the Titans defense. But Corey Davis, I'd be looking to flex this week.
I can get that. Corey Davis is at least getting the targets. So it's just, just most of those targets end up going to defenders. But,
All right. Let's go to a game we can be a little more excited for. We got Kansas City playing against the Eagles. Going to be seeing Jalen Hurts go up against one of the other young, amazing talents in the league. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes on your roster, you just can't take him out. Jalen Hurts kind of looking almost the same way right now if you drafted him early. Do you guys liking Hurts in this matchup? And if you are, which of your receivers are you playing?
Devonta Smith, and I like Hurts in this matchup. I think I like anybody that's going against the Chiefs just because of how their offense is situated right now. Their defense is situated. Don't have much to rush the passer, and they don't have much to contain the passer on the back end. So I like the Hurts, and with what happened in Dallas, giving Sanders like 2 carries and just throwing the ball all the time, I think it's not going to be a severe repeat of that, but I think you're going to see tendencies from that game carry over, and I think you'll be playing there. Goddard's and Ertz are splitting time pretty much half and half. So I think those are his 2 targets, his safety blankets, and Devonta Smith is just, somebody you can play as a flex.
I love obviously we're all playing Mahomes. That's not a question. Hurts, the rushing upside and the floor that he provides with that rushing baseline is just so high that it really covers over a multitude of flaws. And he's clearly the best runner on the team right now. So I'm great with playing Hurts. I don't necessarily know that I'm playing really any of the wide receivers from Philly. I can't get really behind the wide receivers in Philly right now. Devonta Smith, one of my favorite, rookies coming out of college this last year. Really, really like him. But overall, I think Philly is having some struggles, and they're going to be missing 3 of their five starting offensive linemen this week. So I don't think his pockets are going to be clean enough for him to really pass the ball that much. I still think that Hurts is a great play because of the rushing upside, though.
Okay, and then just because we know we're playing Mahomes and we're definitely playing Kelsey and Hill, do we play the number 2 receiver in Kansas City?
Yeah, you do play him. His name is Tyreek Hill. He's the number 2 wide receiver in Kansas City. Travis Kelce's the number 1. That's where we're at. I thought, over the last couple of years that Tyreek Hill had become, bust proof. To be honest, he'd just been lighting the world on fire, and he turned into that really alpha number 1 wide receiver. But, the last couple of weeks, especially last week, he's shown that, he can be game scripted out of a game. And if that happens, the Chiefs are going to go elsewhere, and they're going to focus more on Kelsey. So yes, while I'm never benching Tyreek Hill because the dude is an all-star. He's amazing still. And you're never benching Kelsey. The rest of the wide receivers, just no.
So you're saying there's a chance for Josh Gordon then?
I'm actually a little surprised and excited for him. I think, like I said, just so we can cover the rest of the receivers, I don't trust any of the other receivers. But once Josh Gordon gets 2 games under his belt, I might take the flex shot on him if he gets the targets.
Right. I don't hate that add of Josh Gordon to the back end of your roster if you have a roster spot or have somebody else, because listen, you never know with Josh Gordon, and you pair him up with Mahomes, that could be something magical because they do need another wide receiving option in KC. So I like the idea of adding him to the back of a roster, but I like John's approach of let's wait a couple weeks and see how that shakes out.
Okay. With the running backs, Clyde Edwards-Helaire finally had a good rushing game, but even then his point total just wasn't satisfying. He had 100 yards, but found a receiving touchdown. And then we got Miles Sanders. Are we playing both these guys still, no questions asked, or are we backing off on either?
I'd be backing off on Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Okay.
I think last week was an outlier just due to the fact that Brandon Staley is basically telling the other team, you can run on us. And the Chargers, like, you can run, but you're not going to pass. And so I think what we saw last week was an outlier for CEH, and I think it goes back to more of what we saw before where he's, getting 40, 50 yards and not being efficient with his touches. And at this point, you got to be concerned about ball carrying. And if it continues, I don't see him staying on the field for very long. And then Sanders, I don't know, I thought he was trending upward, and then that last week he just disappeared on me. So maybe you buy the dip and have a good bounce back. But if you're still looking for someone with passing, they went with Kenny Gainwell out of the backfield. So right now Miles Sanders is an enigma for me.
See, for Sanders, I'm the kind of the opposite for you. I think CEH finally had a good week, and I'm thinking that he's going to continue that on. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be as good as last week with the rushing efficiency, but I think he's going to see some more work, and I think that they're going to try and have a little bit more balance in KC because of the lack of a true, number 2 wide receiver there. So I think they're going to try and get him a little bit more involved. Andy Reid's mentioned it a few times, although as we've seen from Andy Reid in the past, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But on the other side, I'm trying my best to not play Miles Sanders this week. We saw last week that he was hardly involved at all, and it's because their offensive line is so bad right now. Okay, they are missing 3/5 of their starting offensive linemen, and that includes both starting guards are out this week, and they're starting left tackle. I just cannot play that running back in good conscience if I can avoid it. I'm doing my best to avoid it at all costs.
Fair enough. Obviously, tight ends we've already talked about. So let's just jump over to Seattle and San Francisco. I know it's one of your homer picks there, Hugh. Let's talk about your team first. Your quarterbacks, I'm not starting either of them. Jimmy G hasn't been doing a lot when he's in there, and Trey Lance on his, I think it's 7 plays in total so far, has been able to score 2 touchdowns. So it seems like they're bringing him in for the glory plays, just trying to get everyone excited for him, which means it's going to take away from Jimmy's ceiling. Your running backs, Elijah Mitchell and Trey Sermon, I'll throw him in the flex. I don't think we saw enough last week to really say that Trey Sermon's going to be your go-to or anything like that. And if Elijah Mitchell's coming back and healthy and ready to go, he's played practice limited this week, I'll give him a flex. Throw him in there. See what I get.
I think you're
looking at the San Francisco. Looking at the San Francisco side, I was kind of agreeing there with John. There is that I can't really start Jimmy G other than as a as a QB2 in a superflex league because Trey Lance is capping his upside. We've seen it happen now a couple of times where he's just getting vultured. You rarely see quarterbacks get vultured of their touchdowns by another quarterback, but all of a sudden now we're seeing it happen in San Fran. And then Trey Sermon just didn't have that great of a game to me. I think he kind of got bailed out last week. But I think Elijah Mitchell will be back, and I think he's going to kind of take over that lion's share of the role in San Fran this week. Who knows how long that's going to last? We got Jeff Wilson coming back in a couple more weeks. So who knows what's going to shake out there long term. But I think that you're right, John, that Elijah Mitchell is like a flex-worthy play this week.
Okay.
Agreed.
All right. Chris Carson, though, I think is a great play going up against San Francisco. They just seem to be keeping him involved. Hugh, I see that face you're making. You don't seem like you like it. And you've been completely on the other side of the fence with me as far as standing with Chris Carson. Am I jumping on board too soon?
Yeah. I'd be hesitant playing a running back against the Niners. They might have a weak secondary right now, but they still have pretty strong defensive line there that are being pretty staunch against the run. I mean, it's not like they're being, like the Niners line of old when they didn't allow a rushing touchdown till like week 15, back when we made our Super Bowl run with Colin Kaepernick. But like they are definitely like stopping the run this year. And I mean, Carson has definitely seen his rushing attempts and his receptions go down. He's seeing Travis Homer getting a little more play. We saw a little bit out of Alex Collins last week. But what I'm more concerned about is the fact that one, Seattle's being more efficient with their opportunities on offense, and they are not getting enough opportunities on offense. They have played the fewest offensive snaps out of any football team this year, but they've also been super hyper efficient. But I mean, that kind of leads to, less plays, less fantasy points. So I'm not like warning signs for Chris Carson, but I'm definitely like, temper expectations. I'd be playing more players from the pass game, in my opinion.
Okay. All right. Let's go over the receivers, though. Obviously, I think you're definitely starting DK, and at this point, you kind of almost still have to start Tyler Lockett. Deebo Samuel is one of the top 5 leading receivers right now, and then we've got your boy Brandon Ayuk finally get some work in, looking like a solid receiver. Is it back to the Deebo Ayuk show?
Yeah, I think you're going to see some of Deebo's attempts come down, or not necessarily attempts, but I think you see some targets and you see it go to Ayuk. If what we saw last year holds up, Ayuk was used more down the field. Still had really good after the catch ability, but Deebo was given more workout in space, sort of deal like we saw against Detroit, where he just absolutely went off. So, I mean, Seattle's another one that just has an absolutely porous defense, and so I think you're starting all of your pass catching options against Seattle from the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, I got to agree with him. The over-under in this game is 51.5 points. That's a lot of points that are going to be scored. Obviously, Russell Wilson is a great quarterback. DK and Lockett are great wide receivers. Yes, they're going to have bust games. But what we've learned in fantasy football is that every wide receiver has bust games, with maybe the exception of Devonta Adams. So one out of the other 100 wide receivers that are in the league. So, yes, while it's going to be kind of a roller coaster with Lockett and DK, I think that this is a game where an in-division game like this where they could really have the potential to go off. And so I don't think you're really ever taking them out of your lineup. Deebo is obviously locked in as well. And I think Ayuk has shown that he's, maturing and really stepping into that role. So I think that, you can really see Ayuk as like a flex play.
Okay. Over in the tight ends, George Kittle possibly missing this week, is not at practice so far. So I don't think I think if he misses, you're not jumping on Ross Dwelly to play him for the week. Just move on to another streaming option. As far as Seattle's tight ends, I don't trust Gerald Everett. He seems to be the one that's getting the most production so far. But being that
isn't Gerald Everett out?
Yeah, he's on COVID. Yeah, he's on the COVID-19 list.
Yeah, he's
beautiful.
out. He's missing.
Don't
this
even
week,
know the question
actually.
now. So you're definitely not playing him. And then I'm still not jumping on Will Disley. So let's move on to another interdivision matchup. We got the Cardinals versus the Rams. Kyler Murray going up against Matt Stafford, 2 quarterbacks that are looking spectacular this year. I think you have to start both of them if you have them. And I don't think any of you are going to disagree with me. I'm looking at the heads, and I got some nods from both of you.
They're lighting it up. I mean, it's the highest over under the week, 54.5 points. Yes, definitely start them both. Obviously, they've looked amazing.
I'm not excited for the rushing game here. We got Chase Edmonds, James Conner, Darrell Henderson, Sony Michel. Last week with Arizona, we saw James Conner vulture 2 touchdowns and take away a lot from Chase Edmonds, and that kind of was a majority of where his work came from. Outside of that, you weren't getting a lot on his 43 yards. Chase Edmonds really could have had a solid day had he been able to score one of those touchdowns, and we might be talking about him a little more favorably. So I'm really not comfortable playing James Conner as that flex role. If anything, I'd play Chase Edmonds as a really, really weak flex in a full PPR league just because he does get some pass catching work there. But if he continues to have his touchdowns taken away from him, I can't do anything.
No, I agree. I agree with you on what you're saying as far as the Arizona side. I'm pretty much out on James Conner right now, and Chase Edmonds as, a desperation flex in a PPR league. You can, maybe see some a little bit there. Yeah. But I actually have to disagree with you on the Rams side of things because I'm really hoping Henderson's back this week because I think that he has looked really awesome throughout these first couple weeks. I think while he's on the field, he's getting that work, he's getting the touches, and he's looking good when he's doing it. And that offense is just running so efficiently and so great with the pass catching, with the passing attack that it's really opening up those the carries for Henderson and that the rushing opportunity. They're not able to stack the box, and he's getting a lot of that. And we know McVay is schemes up some really good running plays and those little dump off passes out of the backfield that Stafford is very accustomed to throwing. He's been doing it his entire career to people like Theo Riddick. So I actually really, really like Henderson.
Yeah, I think Henderson is the play this week if he plays. And then I like Edmonds just because in short line situations you do not run against the Rams, as we learned last week. So I think you want to get him out in the open, and that is definitely not Connor's forte. So I think you play Edmonds there.
Okay, the receivers, we got DeAndre Hopkins definitely getting in your lineup, back full at practice. Cooper Kupp's obviously making it in there. The three guys that are questionable that I'm looking at, Robert Woods, Christian Kirk, AJ Green. Robert Woods not really doing it so far this week or this year with Matt Stafford, kind of really disappointing a lot of us. But though, I mean, at the very worst, he's still putting up flex numbers.
I mean, he's not at the Breakfast Club.
Exactly. That's the problem. He's not having breakfast with his quarterback every morning. He's missing Bible study. I mean, how are you supposed to really be a good NFL receiver if you don't even have breakfast right? I mean, I just don't understand it anymore.
I'll have to talk to him. Are you guys interested in Christian Kirk or AJ Green?
As
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. With the possibility, more than likely, of Jalen Ramsey shadow coverage on DeAndre Hopkins and limiting his upside ability. I think that I saw more of a connection with Kirk over the last couple of weeks with Hopkins kind of being out. So I think with Kyler getting a little bit more comfortability throwing the ball to Kirk, I would lean more Kirk than AJ.
Okay. Yeah, I think AJ Green could be can catch touchdown. He's that big body still, and he's down in the red zone. He can be useful, but I think that's your upside there is you're hoping for a score. Whereas I think Kirk can really do some damage. I think he looked really great last week, and I think that, like Hugh said, I mean Ramsey's going to cover D-Hop. So I think that Kirk is going to be a necessary outlet for Kyler.
Absolutely. All right. What about the tight ends? Are we interested in tight ends? Tyler Higbee, I think if you've got him, you're playing him.
Higbee auto start. I think at this point Higbee's shown like he had some cramping last week, which is why he's taken out. But if not, he would have played 100% last week. So I'm like full steam ahead on Higbee. And then does the Cardinals even have a tight end?
Max Williams, he had a really good week.
So they did roster a tight end. I was really confused. I thought they didn't have a tight end either. It's Higbeast or bust for me. Forget Max Williams. Are you kidding me? No.
All right. Over in Baltimore, they going up against the Denver Broncos. We could see the comeback of Teddy Two Gloves going up against a real team and not just being able to walk all over the Jets. Lamar Jackson should never see your bench. Teddy Bridgewater, I think, is a high-end quarterback too at best.
Real quick, I want to go back to Arizona. I think we skimmed over one player that might be actually flex worthy. Rondale Moore this week, just with that defensive line of LA causing some havoc and making Kyler rush the pocket or leave the pocket. That's where we saw Rondale flourish in his previous two starts. Okay. I think when the play breaks down, he actually goes to Rondale. I think when it's in, an actual play, he's not really looking for him. So I would be looking to possibly flex Rondale this week. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Now it's Lamar Jackson, Teddy Bridgewater. You can go back on.
Okay, so going back to the quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, Lamar, you're never benching him, although I think that you might want to temper your expectations because it is still early in the season. This is only week 4, and they're going to Denver. Lamar is a special talent. He is truly special. But what makes him special is that rushing ability and that running upside and running a mile above sea level takes a toll on your body. And early on in the season, we've seen it time and time again across the league that players tend to struggle a little bit early in the season in Denver. And that's where this game's taking place. So while you're not benching him, I think that you might want to just temper your expectations of how great that is going to look. And Denver's defense has looked pretty stout. Obviously, they've played the opponents that are combined like 0-9 that they've played. So it could be falsely inflated, but it's just one of those things that I think you should keep in mind because it is in Denver.
Okay. I think Lamar Jackson's getting the return of rookie breakout for them in training camp, Rashad Bateman. He's designated a return and he's practiced back-to-back days with no issues. So he could make his debut this weekend against Denver. And if he does, I'd be looking for that passing game to have an uptick because Denver does have pretty good cornerbacks. So, Brown, Watkins, Andrews, and then adding Bateman to it just only going to help.
Okay. So do we see a resurrection of their rushing game there? Tyson Williams last week disappointed heavily.
I got so screwed by Tyson Williams last week. I
think that right there is the best. Yeah, honestly, we're seeing it in the league. A lot of teams are really moving towards that. Using a committee backfield, and you never know which one they're actually going to go with from week to week. And especially when your quarterback is your leading rusher, while Tyson could have a great game, he could also just be game scripted out. And all of a sudden you just never see him. So it's really, I think Hugh explained it best when he said, yeah.
You play the number one rusher, you play Lamar Jackson, and then he just, crapshoot.
All right. Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams. I'm thinking that Javonte Williams is going to start seeing a bigger share of that backfield. Do you guys disagreeing or agreeing?
I think it's going to stay 50-50.
I think he's going to start seeing it later on in the season. I don't think so right now. I think it's still Melvin Ingram is going to, keeping a slight edge over Javonte right now. And I think that's kind of where we're going to see it at for the next couple of weeks. It will be kind of, I think, second half of the season, we'll see Javonte really take over.
Okay. With the receivers, I'm looking at Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick as must-flex receivers. I think both of them have huge upside, but their floors are, still relatively barely comfortable. You're looking at possibly 5 points if Teddy can't get the ball rolling against that Baltimore defense, but the upside's really, really there. Outside of Marquise Brown, I'm not really interested. Even a Marquise Brown guy was kind of making me feel bad last week.
I got so burned by him too. We talked about on the DFS show. 3 touchdowns he dropped. Oh.
Yeah, that was pretty brutal. I'm pretty much staying away from all the pass catchers out of Baltimore unless you're talking about Mark Andrews, the tight end, which obviously I'll play him. But going back to what you were saying about the Denver wide receivers, I think that Tim Patrick, without Jerry Jeudy and without KJ Hamler now, I think it's really going to siphon some more targets to him. So I think that because he's catching those balls that are a lot closer to the line of scrimmage, he doesn't have nearly as much upside as, say, Courtland Sutton, who's really pushing the ball downfield. But I think that your floor is safer with Tim Patrick. I think you're really shooting for, like, with him, he's got a safer floor and not so much of an upside. So I think he's going to be safer in a PPR. You're looking at like 8 to 10 points, in my opinion.
Okay. And then I think both tight ends are must starts in this week. And Mark Andrews and Noah Fant, even on a bad week, their bad weeks are better than most flex options regular weeks. So going over to the Steelers versus Green Bay, our last Sunday night. Oh, I'm sorry. We got one more Sunday night. But we got Big Ben going up against Aaron Rodgers, the two studs from our childhood. Let's talk about how we aren't feeling the most comfortable playing either of them compared to the young guys. Aaron Rodgers kind of maybe something, but the Pittsburgh defense kind of scares me a little bit.
Yeah, and honestly, Pittsburgh's defense is coming back. Sorry about that, guys. Pittsburgh's defense is coming back a lot healthier this week. We're getting Joe Hayden back. He's our number one corner, and he's played extremely well. I don't think that that's going to necessarily make a huge difference against Devontae Adams because the man is just on a different level. But Pittsburgh's defense overall has done a great job of, just holding teams back and forcing a lot of mistakes. So I'm not super excited to play Aaron Rodgers, but he's still Aaron Rodgers, and he's pretty amazing. But I'm not even willing to play Ben in 2 QB leagues right now in a super flex league because it's not necessarily just that he's not throwing the ball downfield, because occasionally he does throw the ball downfield and it looks okay. It's all the bad decisions that he's making right now that are just truly unnerving. I just don't see him as actually a viable fantasy option right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we know who we need to play. I think someone who's entered the conversation to start is MVS. I think he's earned some trust from Aaron Rodgers, and then Tanya. You can, I think, if you need help, you can play him. You're definitely playing Aaron Jones, Devontae Adams, and then I look to Claypool. And I think Freiermuth. And then Brad, I don't know, was Juju, he's listed as questionable this week, right? Or
Juju's listed as questionable, but he's likely to play. They left him out of practice a couple days, but I think he's more than likely going to play.
Yes,
okay, he was back today, but he rested yesterday, but it's a rib injury, so I think they're just kind of giving him a little bit more time to heal up, and then he'll be back on Sunday for sure. So I think that Pittsburgh's wide receivers, I think we're looking at just I don't know if you can play any. I'm just sorry, guys. This one is hitting me emotionally, and I'm kind of just out on everybody on my team that's not named Najee Harris at this point because he's just at least going to get the volume and he's going to get the dump offs.
I think you play Najee and you play Claypool.
All righty. Over in Tampa, and we got New England. What are we doing with New England this week? I'm staying away from the entire team. I don't trust their running backs. I don't like Mac Jones in fantasy football, and Jacoby Myers just isn't doing enough for me to be like, hey, he needs to be in my lineup, even after a game where he got targeted as many times, 14 times.
I think,
see, that's the only thing. I see Hugh nodding, and I'm right there with him. That's the only player I'm willing to play out of New England is Jacoby Myers, and it's a sheer volume play. So in a PPR league, I think that just that sheer number of targets, it just makes him somebody that you actually have to consider. And in a lot of, looking around the league at different injuries, or you lose flex players, or you're in a multi-flex league, then, you might need him for that second flex spot. And that many targets is just hard to find.
Mm-hmm. I think that's correct there. I mean, they've got to score points some way. I think somebody that you can play, though, if they need to score points, and someone who showed out in preseason J.J. Taylor, I've gone around and tried looking for him and picking him up to replace James White, but that offense needs a dump off, somebody close to the line. They've had it for years, and I think Taylor is that answer. I'd look to see Brandon Bolden get some touches there behind Damian Harris, but you're not running against this Tampa Bay defense. So definitely Jacoby. I mean, at this point, Hunter Henry and Jonnu are just eating into each other. I don't see anything else. I mean, Bourne got a touchdown, I think, was it last week or something like that, but it was, kind of just some garbage time points. I mean, I think Tampa Bay just goes in there and just demolishes what they've got going on in New England. And so, but with AB coming back off the COVID list and Gronk coming out healthy, I mean, I think it's just you start your studs from Tampa Bay and then move on.
Yeah, I think you literally play the top 3 receivers, Gronk, Brady, and do not touch one of those running backs.
Nope.
Please, not worth it at all.
Yeah. Agreed 100%. I think this game is probably one of the easiest analyses for the day. Play your studs, play Brady, play Gronk. I mean, and then stay away from the running backs.
Okay. Let's go over to our final Monday night game. We've got the Las Vegas Raiders going up against the Chargers, another beautiful divisional game. Derek Carr leading the NFL in passing yards right now, going up against the guy that just beat Patrick Mahomes. Justin Herbert doesn't have a lot of wins under his belt, but hey, so far he's got a good one. I think you're playing both guys here. There's really no reason you shouldn't be. Derek Carr, if you got him, I think you're looking at someone with top 8 potential in the week just on volume and pure need to throw the ball downfield to keep up with the Chargers if they end up getting on a roll. But you're not playing him over Brady. I'm not playing him over Patrick Mahomes. But I think unless you have a super stud like that, you're throwing Derek Carr in there just on what you've seen so far. Running backs really quick. Kenyon Drake, boo. Josh Jacobs, bum. Peyton Barber, trash. How are we feeling?
I think you're gonna have to. I think you have to play somebody from that running back core. Whoever is playing, I think it's probably going to be Barber. But like I said earlier in the episode, Brandon Staley's playing this I dare you to run. Basically, the Chargers have the most rush yards against them in the entire NFL right now. And they're just bleeding rushing yards. You saw it against the Chiefs with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You saw it against Dallas with Tony Pollard and Zeke. You saw it with Antonio Gibson going against them in week 1. Like, they are just basically daring you to run and say, we're not going to let you pass on us. And I think Gruden will take that, and I think he'll just run the ball out constantly. So I think Barber is a good play this week, and I'm not sure about Drake, but I think Jacobs is still listed as questionable. So, I mean, I think you're playing Barber at this point.
As much as I like John's analysis of those players, and I agree that none of them are talented, Hugh's right. Brandon Staley's that defense has been as the highest percentage of plays played in dime coverage. So that means they're having those extra DBs on the field. And just like Hugh was saying, they're daring you to run. They're saying you're not going to pass on us. So, they're inviting the run. And I think Gruden, he's still got that old school mentality. He's going to want to run the ball. So I think Peyton Barber is actually a fine play this week.
All right. I mean, he did get a lot of touches last week, even in a game that was a shootout. So we'll have to see. I could see it. I'm not going to say no. I just don't trust them.
I agree on the no trust.
Going over in the Chargers, we got Austin Eckler, who's obvious must start, and I'm not really interested in any of the other Chargers running backs until Eckler's completely out before the game starts.
Agreed.
Out of the receivers, Mike Williams and Keenan Allen have just been absolutely electric. You got to make sure if you don't have them, I think you go find a way to get them for a fair price.
I don't think you're going to be able to get that, but I think you might be able to trade for Keenan Allen just with everybody saying like Williams getting the uptick. Like we forget that this is Keenan Allen. So I mean, like
Yeah.
you can go buy him low.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I actually had a friend text me asking me, he's like, talk me out of overpaying to just go get Mike Williams and be happy with it. And I did eventually, but it took a while. What about Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards? Are you guys interested in them this week? We can even throw in Hunter Renfrow.
I think if the game goes to overtime, you're getting Brian Edwards. I think if it goes to a shootout, you're looking for Ruggs. But I think, and I've gone through and I've picked him up in a lot of places. Hunter Renfrow. I think they are finally utilizing him correctly and using him as that ball mover to get that short yardage, and he's getting, 6-7 yards down the field, a little more, and he's getting high volume. So PPR, he's a smash. I think he is a wide receiver 2 at this point in a PPR league, and I think at half point, I think he's a pretty decent flex.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree about on the Renfrow take. I think he's going to see a lot of targets. Close to the line of scrimmage, they're not super valuable, but he's going to see a lot of targets. So in PPR, I think he's a decent play. I think if you're looking at an actual wide receiver, then Henry Ruggs is the only one you can really play right now. I'm still not confident in him. I just think with a over/under at 52 points in division, matchup, projected to look like a shootout, I think that, there's always the chance that he catches, goes 3 for 110 and a touchdown, something like, a line type sort of like that. But I mean, the only wide receiver you really want to play is the tight end Darren Waller, because it doesn't matter if he's in triple coverage, quadruple coverage. They can have somebody literally riding on his back, and Derek Carr is still going to throw him the ball. So that's really the only pass catcher from Las Vegas that I'm excited to start.
Okay. And then Hugh, obviously we know Brad really likes Darren Waller this week. Everyone should be playing Darren Waller. Are you playing Waller?
Yeah, I'll play Waller, but I'd be concerned. I'm actually like kind of concerned just for Waller's ceiling, not for the Waller as the player, but like Foster Moreau is actually getting goal line targets, and he's actually receiving more goal line targets than I thought he would be receiving, which is cause for concern on ceiling for Darren Waller. But that's, something to just worry about if you're really looking in DFS and stuff like that.
All right, and then the final guy we'll bring up, are we taking a shot as a streaming option on Jared Cook, or are we looking other ways?
I think he's a fine streaming option.
And I feel like you should be looking other places. I think that so many of the targets are going. You're seeing Keenan Allen, Mike Williams.
I think we're having some.
And also, those are your 3 primaries, and I'm just not looking for that 4th option.
Okay. I think we had a little bit of
I think I was
audio issue
showing
on that. All right. No, I think we heard it. It just came in a little jumbled up there. So like you were saying, you're looking at Foster as like a streaming, or I'm sorry, as maybe a streaming option, but a very, very weak one. Then obviously, Hugh, you're saying that you like him.
I think there's just enough passing volume to go around in that offense that Cook finds his way.
All right. Is there any player that we maybe didn't dive into? One player that you guys would like to say something about that you want to tell people they need to be playing this week? Anyone? Under the gun. Kind of random, but just kind of curious.
Let's see. I think DK Metcalf has one of his boom weeks this week. I'm buying in on DK.
Okay, Brad.
And for me, I think I'm gonna go with Tim Patrick for the Denver Broncos. I know we mentioned him earlier, but I really do like Tim Patrick a lot this week.
All righty. All right, guys. Well, I really appreciate you guys jumping in and joining me for this episode. I think it went pretty well. I hope if you guys ever jump in again, it would be great. Everyone that watched, thank you so much for tuning in and jumping along. Week 4 is going to be a really fun week. We've got some of the best matchups of the season. Tampa Bay Tampa Brady going up against New England Patriots, seeing Bill Belichick for the first time since he said goodbye. And then I think the Chargers and the Raiders are going to be a great game. So make sure you guys get excited. We do have an episode with me and each of these guys coming out before Sunday, as well as our live stream Sunday morning. So stay tuned for all those, and we will see you next time.